about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So I want to warn you guys about something, and this is something weird that's been happening to me, and it's kind of scary, and I think we need to figure out how to protect ourselves preemptively. So I am getting assaulted and attacked by these AI bots. Now, I know you guys are like, okay, really? Okay, what? Are you having hallucinations? No, I'm not. Something is happening, whether it's my social media or something, where it's damaging what I'm trying to do day to day, and I can't fix it because there's no people. Remember I told you with Facebook, I've been on Facebook for years, since its inception. I've used their advertising, and somehow, after I was advertising my latest book, getting ready to pay the payment, I always pay early, and I also have it automatically attached. It wouldn't accept my payment. I'm like, what's going on? And they said, well, we have blocked your account. I'm like, why? What happened? Yep. Did somebody hack it? What? It won't tell me. It's a bot. And I'm like, well, let me at least pay you guys while you guys are looking into this. No, we cannot accept payment. Your account is not going to be reinstated. Why not? It was my depression and doctor book. We're trying to save lives. It wasn't even a big, it's not like New York selling. I mean, it's not political. And I can't get through to anybody. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's just a glitch with Meta. Well, then Twitter, now X, I get a message today saying my account has been suspended. Why? Because of spam. Spam? I mean, like renewal for Anderson, like all those sort of emails. And I don't sell any products. I'm not advertising anything on what are you talking about? And then when I hit the appeal, within seconds, it comes back saying our automated system says that they, because of spam, they are not going to reinstate. Your account is going to be suspended. And I'm like, can I talk to a human? What's going on here? Now, a common denominator that might be going on is a few days before these alleged spam suspensions, my phone was giving me codes to log in, like, your authentication code, even though I wasn't trying to log in. So I'm like, somebody must be trying to log into my account. All right, I'm going to have to change my password, but I'm not going to deal with the authentication code because if I hit it, maybe that's a trap. So whatever. That's the only underlying thing where maybe somebody was trying to access the accounts. But my problem with this is I can't talk to a human. And if I talk to a human going, do you know what the hell's going on? And they say it's a glitch. By the way, thank God there were humans when I couldn't fly out of Panama City. Because the computer wouldn't let me change the flight, even though we had to deplane. And it took a human trying to help the override. These computers are pretty vicious sons of guns. And so how does this affect you? Well, if you're not into social, and I'm not a big social media person, I don't do a lot with Twitter. I've paid them for advertising and things like that. And so if they think it's my book, I mean, they have proof that I'm an author and a publisher, and they have. I mean, I paid some advertising a while back on it, so they know I'm legit. But my concern is now we see the tech companies completely engulfed and embracing and submerged in AI and using these bots. What happens if it's our bank? What happens if it's the power company? Now, right now, we could still access a human. But that's not where things are going. We're seeing the writing on the wall. And I know not accessing my Twitter, I'll be fine. I don't do a lot with Twitter. I don't care a lot about Twitter. Social media, yeah, it helps with the show and all that, but it's not the biggest thing. But, it's just a matter of time when you're never going to be able to access a human. And so what should we do to be protecting ourselves? Well, the first thing I'm thinking about is the bank. Somebody I guess, hacked into debit cards. Remember I showed you guys where it was, I think it was out of the UAE or Saudi Arabia, and many people's banks were, I guess, hacked. And then these charges were put on various accounts through debit cards. I'm not a big debit card fan, but now with Venmo and Zelle and all that, it's pushing us back to debit cards. So thank God we found a human who was able to correct it. But if you can't find a human and it's just bots, they're like, sorry, you're screwed. So maybe we need to start thinking about not having all our money in a bank. Maybe, yeah, we have, our savings in a bank, whatever, but we start holding on to some cash because in case there is an issue and you can't get a hold of a human, you could be screwed. I mean, same thing with power and generators, anything you think of where you're going to have to call customer service or need a hand and there's not going to be a human, you might want to think of a backup system. And I don't want to, sound paranoid, but I've never felt this way where I can't fix something. I mean, see, okay, for me, somebody like me, if something goes wrong that I've done, I kind of know about it before I even do it. Okay, I messed up the coq au vin that I was cooking, or I don't know, I used a bad word, in front of some kids, and a mom was like, when you taught Sunday school, you said the bad word. Yeah, they were doing paper mache, and something happened with the blender, and I go, oh, and I said the S word. And then and the kids were all laughing or whatever, but a parent heard about it and they said, you said a bad word and you're teaching Sunday school. And I was like, what the blank is your problem? I didn't say that. But yeah, but okay. So, if I will own up to doing something wrong, but if I didn't do anything wrong and now these consequences are happening, why? Because the AI algorithm or the bot doesn't like me. You see, I could deal with people. I could deal with people. You got a problem with me? We could deal with it. We could hash it out. I could convince you that you're wrong. Right? Now, I could work with people. That's my specialty. I know how to deal with people. I love, interacting with people. I feel like there are problems we could solve. Corey and I hardly ever fight because when I see him upset about something, I know exactly what to say, what to do, and we're good. I don't know how to deal with the bot. I can't get around it. I can't convince a bot. I can't flirt with a bot. I can't flatter it. And it's having this much control, which now affects my career. What's it going to do to the rest of the aspects of our life? Make sure you have a plan B that doesn't rely on whatever tech you're using. That's all I can say. The 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
And we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877 Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So I actually like a lot of what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing as U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary. What? Yeah. I actually, well, come on. Yes, I do. Doctors, it's very interesting. I go to these medical conferences and you hear people, oh gosh, RFK Jr., oh my God, what is he doing? Oh, we got to impeach him. We got to get him out of there. We have to. And I'm like, for a non-doctor, for a non-physician, he sure sounds like the doctors I trained with and trained under, where we need to reevaluate the science. We need to make sure we're not over-medicating. We need to make sure the studies that are being published aren't biased and don't have limitations that affect the integrity of the scientific outcome. It's interesting. I was at first a little hesitant on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because I really want a physician running the HHS. I understand, with Kathleen Sebelius and other, you really didn't have, you would have physicians running the Medicaid or Medicare or Surgeon General or the CDC, but the HHS was usually somebody who would be more, political or in an administrative role. But they do make a lot of decisions, and I've always kind of felt whoever should be running the HHS should be a physician. But I got to tell you, what RFK Jr. has been suggesting. Now, I don't agree with all of them. I'm still not a fan of raw milk. I think pasteurization is extremely necessary. I still believe that we have a vaccine, and he is not completely anti-vaccine, but I still believe we do need pediatric vaccines to stop polio and multiple other ailments that had been killing kids. And now, thank God, we have a robust pediatric population because of our vaccine program. But when R.F. Kennedy Jr. is saying, look, let's make sure we are looking at the safety studies. Let's make sure that we are allowing parents to make educated decisions. Are we evaluating all the risks, or are we, we're such as with the COVID vaccine? Does a 6-month-old need a COVID vaccine? Should they be available for a 6-month-old if the family wants it? Yes. But does it have to be required on a healthy 6-month-old? I think a lot of doctors would agree with them saying only require the necessary ones, but make sure that it's available if the doctor and the parents feel that their child needs it. These are kind of things that we learned in medical school. This isn't, that's why when I hear doctors, freak out about what RFK Jr. is doing, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Same thing with pediatric transgender medical treatments. I thought everything was about informed consent. And when you hear, if officials say, well, we don't want the parents involved, but then who's giving consent? Who's doing the informed consent? You guys aren't, come on, what are you doing here? So the latest thing that RFK Jr. is doing is announcing a plan to reduce the overprescribing of psychiatric medications and support alternative treatment options and discontinuation of medications when needed. Robert F. Kennedy said today, we take clear and decisive action to confront our nation's mental health crisis by addressing the overuse of psychiatric medications, especially among children. Now, this is what he said Monday at a Maha Institute Summit on Mental Health and Over-Medicalization. He said, we will support patient autonomy, require informed consent and shared decision-making, and shift the standard of care towards prevention, transparency, and a more holistic approach to mental health. That's exactly how I was trained. And you'll see doctors will be like, oh, wow, horrible. Like, where did you guys train? So this is being reported by CNN. The announcement follows recent work by psychiatric professionals to support more research, training, and consideration of when discontinuation is appropriate, such as the American Society of Clinical Psychopharmacology guidelines on these issues that were published in February. They say some psychiatry experts generally welcome the new federal efforts towards improving psychiatric health care, but also noted concerns, including potential overemphasis on overprescribing, while access to mental health care remains inadequate. This is according to CNN. So what has been happening, which, the reason why this has come up is RFK Jr. has suggested that many of these drugs might be overused and might be linked with violence and mass shootings. Might also be linked to the risks with developing fetuses that women take with pregnancy, and that withdrawal could be worse than that from other medications or drugs. And that it could harm, especially kids taking these medications. And he's not entirely wrong about that. Now, when somebody says, "Oh my gosh," it's so where the mass shootings have come in is you have an individual who may have received medical treatment because they have a medical condition or a psychiatric condition, and they might have been put on a medication. In some of these mass shootings, they weren't taking the medication they were prescribed, or they were on a medication and it might not have been working. So one very public case is that of Rob Reiner's kid, where Rob Reiner and his wife were murdered, allegedly by their son. And the news has been talking about, well, what are the medications he's taking? What's he taking? What was, and we see that many of these medications could have suicidal ideation. They could also have mood changes. And when you take a medication that is trying to alter the way your brain looks at things, there could be some unpredictability. Now, we have loads of evidence that many of these medications work to improve one's quality of life and maybe prevent the depression or anxiety or suicidality or even homicidal ideation. But what if they're not taking the dose 100% correctly? What if their body starts to reject it? And get used to it. Look how many of you guys have been on Ozempic or Mounjaro and you go, you know what, now I'm not losing any more weight. My body's kind of getting used to it. And then your body decides to change its tune. What if you run out of your medicine and now you're having a rebound? When patients have been on some of these antidepressants and they don't get their medication, they go through a withdrawal. And that withdrawal is not fun. Which means if you're going to commit somebody to a medication, you need to ensure that they could always access it. And that's why whenever I would take somebody off of a medication, I did a very, very slow withdrawal. So let's say somebody was on 100 milligrams of Zoloft. Well, I wouldn't say 100 because usually somebody on 100 wouldn't really want to go off it completely. So let's say 50. So I had somebody, let's say, on 50 milligrams of Zoloft. And I have done this. So I don't want to say hypothetically. I've done this. So they want to go off the medication. And I'm like, well, if you go off of it, you might go through some withdrawal. So what I would do is, of the 7 days that they were on the 50, this next week, on one of the days, take a half a dose, 25. Then in 2 weeks, pick 2 days to do the 25, let's say Monday and Friday. And by 7 weeks, you are now down to 25 milligrams a day. Then for the next week, we will go to half a pill, 12.5, or maybe even try off for 1 day. Then the next week, we'll pick 2 days where you're off. So to wean somebody off 50 milligrams of Zoloft or sertraline, it would be a 14-week experience, and they would do great. That's how I would do it, but it's slow. Not many people have access to a medical provider or have the time. If their insurance changes or they lose their job and their benefits run out at the end of the month, they could be in trouble. So we do need to look at this. I see a lot of kids on Lexapro and Zoloft and Paxil. I see a lot of pregnant women on these medications. And I find that kind of fascinating because when I was delivering babies, you couldn't have them on the SSRI. If they were on it, that could affect the fetus. But now I'm noticing that people are taking it. Now, I think it's because the doctor is weighing the benefits versus the risks, saying, look, them being depressed would be worse for them than them being on the medication. But we still wonder, are kids who are, born to moms who were taking these medications, was there a subset that might have gotten some side effects or some neurodiverse symptoms. We need to look at that. Now, the ADHD. The ADHD, we for years have been concerned about overprescribing with kids. Mom would bring in a child and say, my child is doing poorly in school, doesn't pay attention, has full-blown textbook ADHD. And I turn my head and I look at that child, and that child is playing a video game the whole time, 20, 30 minutes, sitting there. And then I'm having a conversation with the child. And I'm not saying that means they don't have ADHD. It's just maybe we need to relook at schools. And if kids are getting bored in school, maybe, like I said, we don't do hour-long classes. We do 20-minute. You guys know how I feel about school, how we should have the core classes in the morning, no longer than 20, 30 minutes of practical learning, life skills in the afternoon. Don't go away. We'll be right back. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Hi, guys. Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme. The solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, this is a definite learning curve. I got to tell you, we are seeing a presidency, and we are seeing the way the White House is. This is not your Kennedy, Obama, Clinton, Bush, even Trump won. First administration White House. This is very different, and maybe it's because of the Gen Z infusion of let's be a little bit more practical and less of the pomp and circumstance and traditions and all that, and so it's really interesting. So you have Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, who was, I believe, 8.5 months pregnant during the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting and attack, working up until she's ready to deliver, which is something that I kind of appreciate, because I did that. I worked until I delivered. I worked until I was actually with my first baby. I was with Dr. Dave Tatori, allergist, and I was doing my allergy rotation. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "I'm not due yet." Yeah, he's like, "You're due any day. Go have your baby." And maybe it's because I was too big and we all weren't fitting into the rooms, but I worked until and then I went in, and that's when I got induced, and then 5 days later, it took 5 days, finally was able to give birth. That was a rough 5 days, but I worked until the last day. Same thing with my second. I worked all the way through, and so seeing Caroline Leavitt do that, that's pretty good, pretty cool. But then she goes on maternity leave. Who takes over? Who is going to be the backup? All right. Now, I doubt the White House is going to call Jen Psaki. So, who then would Kayleigh McEnany, did a fairly good job. So instead, what they had was Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, I like Marco Rubio a lot. I like him. He also, he's from Las Vegas. I've met him a few times. He's very smart, and I mean he stood up to Trump, early on with in the hand, but it's funny because Trump made fun of Ted Cruz. Trump made fun of Rand Paul. He couldn't really find much on Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was pretty. I mean, he does his job. And so when we found out that Marco Rubio was going to be Secretary of State, it was one appointment that I was like, I see this. That it would make sense. So then now you see Marco Rubio handling the presser, right? The White House briefing. And he was not, he talked straight. He was not going to try to hide the fact that a job like that is pretty chaotic. And I think it was very flattering to the Jen Psaki's, the Kayleigh McEnany's, the Carolyn Levitts, the people before him, because because it's not easy. I mean, to be able to control a room where everybody wants to ask a question and get their questions in, for him to kind of manage it. But he even said, he's like, wow, this is chaos. This is, he's like, you in the pink dress, you in the, but what I liked about it was not the way he called on people, was, he kind of answered straight. And he's like, guys, look, Iran is blockading the Strait of Hormuz. Iran can't be doing that. You can't let somebody who has threatened America, threatened other countries, attacking other countries, have that control. And the way he explained it was much better than the way Trump explained it. I mean, and Trump has explained things well, but a lot of people tune him out. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, he goes on and on and on. And so, you're like, okay, he's going on and on and on. But Marco Rubio was very succinct, very on it. I actually, one time I was interviewing, I was there at a presser at Pawn Stars. And, mucho gusto, I met him and all that and whatever. Then during the presser, he's like, anybody here? So he thought I was from Univision or something like that. So I was pretty impressed that he liked my Spanish. But no, I'm not from Telemundo or Univision. I wish. So I've had a good experience with him personally. I like the guy. But, seeing him, with his, so it's really, really interesting because J.D. Vance on the Republican side, seems to be a favorite because he's the vice president. He seems to be, very, very, as opposed to what you saw with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Joe Biden wasn't really in the room with Kamala Harris that much. They didn't want the contrast between the youth and the older. And I think they really sidelined Kamala Harris. Some people say she would have never done anything. Some people believe she would have done something, but she was sidelined by the president. So you didn't get to see much. With J.D. Vance, what Trump has been doing is making sure you always see J.D. Vance, at the negotiating table, so that people see that he's been very active. Because if the GOP, want to win another election, and they find that the MAGA policies were popular enough to get Trump elected for a second time, they're going to want to use that. But people are going to say, but Vance is no Trump. Now, some people like the fact that Vance isn't unhinged as it pertains to social media and as it pertains to, using cuss words and things like that. He seems to have a more professional demeanor, but other people really, really like that, what Trump's thinking. I mean, he'll say it. There was a reporter that asked Trump, you said that it wasn't Maduro. I believe there was another leader. You said that he might have to watch his ass if he starts. He goes, oh yeah, he's going to have to watch his ass. I mean, you don't really hear that from presidents. Some people love that about him. Some people dislike it about him. But I kind of get the feeling that Marco Rubio is getting a lot of, shall we say, bipartisan respect. It's very, very interesting. You don't hear a lot of individuals on either side go after Marco Rubio. And I think, and I'm not saying he's Teflon per se, because I'm sure if he does run for president, people are going to be, all over him and trying to find something wrong. But, he's, you need me to answer the question in Spanish, I'll answer it in Spanish. It looks like he also knows how to speak Italian, which is very impressive. So he got to kind of show off a little bit. I know some reports are saying, oh, it was the most chaotic press conference. I actually found that a little endearing because, he wasn't trying to pretend that this was his forte. Yeah, it's like this is this was very flattering to the press secretary as Karine Jean-Pierre, Jen Psaki, Catherine Levitt. It was almost or Caroline Levitt. It was almost kind of a look. I'm no press secretary. I'm Secretary of State, but you have a lot of questions that have to deal with Iran. I'm here. I'm going to answer them. Caroline's on maternity leave. Let's do it. Well, very practical. I understand you could have somebody polished and good with PR and saying what needs to be said, because when you get a press secretary, I got to tell you, these guys, whew, I mean, they're pretty well. Not anybody could do that job. But right now, what a lot of people are kind of wanting is just, tell me like it is. Caroline Levitt is speaking for the administration. She does a really good job with that. Just like Karine Jean-Pierre, I thought she did a fantastic job. I mean, she was caught between, do I say the truth about what's going on with Biden and his, and competency or whatever? But for her role in the Biden administration, she did a good job. But now what people want is, okay, we don't want a polished answer of what's going on or what's going on, Marco. Lay it on us. And Marco Rubio was in the thick of it. And so I found that to be, I kind of want to hear more pressers with him. If he's the one that, now, we might not necessarily, we might have to hear from Besson, as it pertains to the economy and things like that. But I got to tell you, Marco Rubio, I mean, he could answer any of the questions. He could, in fact, somebody said, well, I have two questions. And you could see at first he might have been a little intimidated. He goes, well, I'll answer one. I'll see if I like the other one. And then with both questions, which were kind of different questions, like, I like both. I want to answer both. And so I thought that was very telling. It didn't look like he was, he had to go through a lot of preparation and all that. And he did end up, after about 15 minutes leaving, he said, look, your 15 minutes are up. And so you could tell he didn't want to, push it. And you also saw that little bit of humbleness, like, I'm kind of in a new role here. I don't want to mess it up, because Caroline Levitt's not here, so to speak. And he didn't say that, but that was kind of what you felt. But I got to tell you, what I'm seeing and the feedback I'm getting is, even from Democrats, they like him, and they like him more than Vance. So it's going to be really interesting to see who runs on the Republican side later. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc-A-Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So making headlines is a Texas father protected his family from being abducted by a carjacker. but ended up shooting the suspect, and the suspect has died. An investigation is now going on. But an unidentified man and his relatives were sitting in a Garland parking lot in Texas when a suspect approached the driver's side door and attempted to get in. The father immediately got out of the sedan, attempted to keep the assailant from entering it, while the rest of the family could run and flee. This happened at about 3:30 p.m. on Sunday in Garland, near Dallas. Then the two get into a struggle. The carjacker managed, according to Daily Mail, to get inside the driver's seat. They continued to tussle until the criminal pushed the father out, stood up, closing the back door, and then got into the vehicle again. The father, the guy that owns the car, right, managed to get around to the passenger side front door. He allegedly fired more than 10 rounds at the assailant. The criminal was taken to the hospital and was pronounced dead. The father has turned the gun over to the police, is cooperating in the investigation. And they believe, according to Lieutenant Pedro Baranu, that the police are unlikely to file charges against the father because his actions seem to be self-defense. Now, Tatiana Starks, who manages a nearby smoke shop, said she noticed the man had attempted to get into other vehicles prior to going into the family of eight's car. She said you could definitely tell he was not in his right state of mind. I'm just glad that the man was able to protect himself and his family. It's just a blessing that the kids and the family walked away with no injuries. Now, they say police confirmed the man had attempted to illegally enter 2 other cars before he crashed into 2 vehicles. He attempted to get into both vehicles before eventually making his way to the family sedan, and that sedan was parked near a gas station off Highway 66. So we don't know if he was under the influence or if he had severe mental health issues. He obviously had some mental health issues to think that he could steal a car with people in it. But he was unarmed. Now, this is interesting because I know people are talking about this case. First of all, you need to protect your family. You protect your family. That comes first. However, some prosecutors, or if they're defending the suspect, or if they're going to, if there's going to be a suit, they could say, you know, what we learned with the CCW class is you are allowed to use force if your life is in jeopardy. After the threat, or if there's a threat, after the threat has subsided, if you continue to use force after that, then there could be charges against you. And so it's, you know, I mean, this sounds a little more cut and dry. Guy was trying to steal his car. He went to protect himself, but somebody could say the family had fled. He wasn't armed. He was just going to take the car, and you shot him. Now, for those of us that, you know, are trained, you know, and it's one of those things where, you know, we're taught, let them take the car as long as nobody's going to get hurt. On the other end, though, as a physician, I'm thinking to myself, this guy is not of sound mind. Who else is he going to hurt? I really want to subdue him. Now, I'm not a cop, so I'm not allowed to, and I wouldn't be able to subdue him with multiple rounds. But you know, you know, these situations are never cut and dry. That's the point I want to make. You know, you need to protect your family, and whenever you are protecting your family or protecting yourself from a threat, the law is on your side. Especially when there's witnesses, there's camera, if there's a threat, you are allowed to protect yourself. But if the imminent threat subsides and there's another action, now that starts to get a little bit more loose. And you have to be aware, especially you have to be, you know, when you're in the thick of it, it's a little tricky. So let's say you have your weapon drawn, and, you know, you're trying to defuse the threat, and the threat, you know, might be diffused temporarily. And then you feel like it's tricky. As far as I'm concerned, protect yourself first. You could always deal with lawyers. I'd rather you be alive and in jail than not alive. You got to protect yourself. But this case though might turn into something a little bit more involved if they say that after the fact there was the threat was minimized. But unfortunately, we have people who have no issue putting other people at risk, taking their car, taking their car. It's frightening. Florida, a woman was just sitting there, broad daylight at a stoplight, doing what she's supposed to because you are not allowed to run a stoplight. Somebody carjacks her, kills her to take her car. So it's dangerous, very dangerous. And look at this case here. Did you guys see this video of this woman who decided to drive in Spokane, Washington on the sidewalk after a kid on a bike Did you guys see this? This happened on April 28th. Wendy Clementi, 56 years old, was caught on camera. This is being reported by ABC News, driving her silver Ford Focus. And then she turned onto a sidewalk where a child was riding their bike and starts driving on the sidewalk after this kid. The driver chased the juvenile, the kid on the sidewalk, before re-entering the roadway and then left the area. Thankfully, according to the sheriff's office, the juvenile was not hit or injured. What the hell? Deputies began searching the area for the driver when they received a call about a reported burglary at a home a mile away. They found Clementi at the home and her car in the driveway. She probably thought nothing of it, going, I'm good. But that's a felony. You went after a child with a weapon that could have killed him, your car. Now, the sheriff's office alleged that Clementi denied drinking alcohol or consuming any drugs, but later her story changed and admitted to drinking alcohol. So right now she is charged with first-degree assault, DUI, first-degree criminal trespass. And she is going to be released on her own recognizance until her next court date. Though that's scary stuff. I mean, I don't even know what to say, you know? Have you guys been following the Stefan Diggs case? Apparently a jury ruled in favor, saying Stefan Diggs was not guilty of assault. This was interesting. I saw a little bit of the court hearing. So basically what happened with this is New England's Patriots receiver Stefan Diggs, whose brother Trayvon Diggs, also in the NFL, had pled not guilty. He's a 4-time Pro Bowl wide receiver, pled not guilty to a felony strangulation charge and a misdemeanor assault and battery charge stemming from a dispute with his chef. Now, the trial lasted for only 2 days. It was pretty quick. I think it was pretty obvious that there was that the victim, the victim who accused him, did not have her story straight. And so the case centered on a December 2nd encounter at Diggs' homes in Dedham, near Boston, where Jamila Adams, known as Mila, was a former live-in personal chef. She said that he slapped her and choked her during an argument, but reported it a week or two later, I think 10 days later. Diggs' attorney said the alleged assault never happened, questioned Adams' credibility. Apparently the dispute was about money or relationship tensions, her not being able to go to a trip to Miami. And when they were interviewing her, you saw that she just kept saying, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I don't understand the question. I don't. And then, the lawyer caught her in a couple, you just testified to this and now you're saying it's a different date. But what saved Stefan Diggs was the documentation that they did pay her, that there was text messages and emails showing that she was paid. Apparently she was a live-in maid, so she was a live-in chef, so she got to have, she got to live there as well as make $2,000 a week. And then when he let her go, she wasn't paid for that week, but she wanted to be paid. So I'm not sure when then the alleged assault happened or how it happened, but she even had her recollection of events still seemed a little, shall we say, sketchy. It didn't really seem to follow what was reported in the police report. And so Stefan Diggs now, I believe, is hoping that the NFL, I believe from what I understand, the NFL said that we are monitoring all developments in this matter, which remains under review of personal conduct policy. So I don't believe he has a home yet in the NFL. But this was before the Patriots went to the Super Bowl, and this was pretty kind of shocking. I don't know much about Stefan Diggs, but I know his brothers, we've watched them for years, and professional athletes, have been both found guilty of actually, doing assault, but also being targets of when they're just celebrities. And so you're going to see a lot of people start to kind of dissect, how these cases happen and, what these athletes are getting themselves into. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.